give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Right. Okay, let's try that again. We will call the meeting to order, interpretive exhibit, the Wayfinding Committee. Thank you everyone for blocking this out on your very busy calendars. Busy time of year. Sorry to say it's busy in the airways too, out across the flying world. And so we're missing our good friends from AI this morning, but glad to have you zooming in to catch us up on all the work you've been doing. And so it's good to see you both, Rachel and Nigel. Thank you. We'll get to you in just a second. Treasurer Meyer, good to see you. Right. Before we get started, I just wanted to publicly salute two of the members of our subcommittee here. Had amazing young athletes perform over the weekend. So congratulations to our runners. We had a Racinas and a Madsen, and they both finished in the top 5 in the state in their respective events. And pretty amazing. So we were watching. It was cool.
You didn't all by yourself.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's right. That's right. If you've never been to the state track meet, it's something you really ought to try to go to, even if you're not a track fan. All those tents and all the colors of each one of the schools, and it's just so fun to watch. But anyway, congratulations, you guys. So let's move on. It is time for a project update, and Nigel, again, it's good to see you on screen. At least we miss you here, but take it away and catch us up on since the last time we visited.
Thanks very much. It's good to see all your tiny little faces on my screen as well. I am disappointed we couldn't be out there. We actually had some physical samples we were going to bring with us, and it would have been fun to show you guys those for the micro interactives and see how those are developing. Really, they're pretty sweet. Lovely to see everybody there. Actually, Rachel's going to kind of kick us off with a bit of an update on many other things, and then later we're going to focus on the civics lab.
Yeah, thank you, Nigel. So overall update for package 1 and package 2. So that's all the signage, wayfinding, and the static exhibits. We're going through final punch on those items. So you'll see some things still being tweaked, but overall, feeling good about where that's at. Like Nigel said, for package 3, we were going to show you some samples that we had of micro interactives. Actually, that's for package 4 that were with us and caught in the weather as well as us. But we're going to send those. So if you guys are interested, you'll be able to see that with the core team later this week. We'll have those shipped out. We do have fabric samples for the portraits of history that I believe Nathan has, if he is able to show that. So you'll be able to look through that today. You'll also start to see some on-site work being done. So we are, working on portraits of history on site as well as the staged vault. And then in June, you'll start to see more of that work happening with the niches and vitrines. So I'm going to hand it off back to Nigel to talk about the student path as part of package 3.
All right, so that's the first of 4 things we're going to go over: the student path, some graphic style panels, style updates, just to sort of anchor our look and feel for the room. Then the build and interactive review will actually be folded together. So as we move to an interactive point, then Emilio is going to jump in and help us understand those things and how they're developing. And when we talk about build and other elements, then I'll start to voice up a little bit. So as always, let us know if you have any questions. I think we're making great progress here. There's a few things that we want to focus on, making sure we get an okay on from you folks, and as we go through, we'll sort of say it would be great if we could get a yes or no on a particular element as we move through it. Ashley, if I can lean on you to just sort of remind me when we pop onto one of those things, so people kind of drive their attention towards that would be great. All right, so starting with the student path on our way to get to the civics lab, and we've looked at this, and you've reviewed and approved a bunch of elements here, and it's already in production. But we began to realize that that path out by the room that's frequently used by the Capital Club is as much of an access point to the student to the Capital classroom as the other hallway that we've been focusing on, especially since that leads towards the men's bathroom. So there's quite a few kids and others that will enter through that side as well. So it felt like a miss if we didn't sort of elevate that part of the path. So let's start by looking at where our students start, and that's going down the hallway. So you remember that we talked about this big impact graphic as you go down those stairs. And then as you look down the hallway, on one side, we have all these visuals and images, these quotes on there. On the other side, we focus on a page from the Constitution and other images that sort of set the stage for the space that they're in, with another quote at the end. So citizenship is the chance to make a difference to the place where you belong. And I should have read that quote from the other side, because we use a quote on the in this new area. And this one is, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So we've walked down those halls. You go into the room, and there's a couple of quotes.
Nigel, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you. We are not seeing page progression. At least I'm not.
Oh. You're still on the cover.
We're still on the cover.
Let me stop sharing and reshare and see if that solves our thing. I apologize for that.
It sounded great.
It's spectacular. Okay. Yay. All right. So we started down the stairwell. Welcome to Wyoming Capitol Square. Welcome to the People's House. The quote that I read on that wall, on the opposite wall facing it, as you become the corridor you walk down, we have the constitutional grab, and then at the end of that hallway, you see down there at the end, there's that quote. You walk into the room, and you're surrounded by the Four Sisters, those statues that sort of encompass that whole space. You kind of walk into the rotunda, and we've got a couple of quotes there. The one over the counter that's at the back of the room there right now, where you get your coffee, is the most important role in the Capitol is citizen. And then at the other end of the room, by where that screen comes down and up when it's needed, we have the most important thing an institution does is not to prepare a student for a career, but for a life as a citizen. Really great quotes. So we set that up as you move towards it. So we want to do the same in that corridor on the other side. So if you looked around the corner there as you walk out during the meeting, this is what we're suggesting. There's already this half wall panel on the wall, kind of explaining the experience within the whole building. But then we have a quote on the right here above that bar that says, "The life of a republic lies certainly in the energy, virtue, and intelligence of its citizens," a quote from Andrew Johnson. And then we've got a focused image of the light from the historic Supreme Court on the opposite side of the wall. So let me show you the elevations so you get a bit better sense of how those are balanced.
Nigel, I'll jump in here. Just as a reminder to the subcommittee, this entire presentation deck that you're seeing today will be uploaded to file stage for review absent objection after the call today. This would be our first decision point for that approval that we're looking for from that deck.
Okay. Let me go back to the render since it's a little larger, easier to see. Any questions?
So I'm curious, you're asking for our approval of it, and we haven't been distributed yet, or when's the approval deadline for it?
That's correct. So the approval will be part of the presentation that's uploaded to file stage. So you'll have a second chance to look at it within file stage and provide comments there.
Good question. I kind of misled you in the way I set that up. Yeah, so you will have a chance. Okay. Any other questions?
I would encourage committee, let's be sure to speak up and jump in at any point if you have any questions or concerns of any kind, because we're rolling. you know, and we want to make sure that, that we get any concerns out there. And as Rachel just pointed out, we're gonna have another chance too, but today's our chance on some of this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Lennon.
A question that Andrew Johnson, that's the vice president that,
I believe that's correct, but that's a good question. I guess I just assumed that was the one.
yeah. What's his connection to Wyoming? None, I guess, huh? Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I think what DI was looking for was quotes on the hallway on the east and in the classroom and on this side that focuses on citizenship.
Yeah.
So all the quotes in that space kind of have that tie in. We had Wyoming Historical Society looked into Wyoming figures as you requested for quotes, and while there are some very good and very colorful ones, they might not have been more of this teaching about being a citizen.
Yeah.
There were a couple very good and colorful ones from former Senator Alan Supin that would have been
You
very-
really got to my.
yeah. Some of them may not be appropriate for kids.
Yeah, not on this wall, yeah.
I like, my knee jerk is I like adding something to this hallway, and I know that these elements are relatively low cost compared to some of the others. The one thing that jumps out at me is where we label that Historic Supreme Court. Of course, we all know that's not the Historic Supreme Court, but it looks like a label to a room. So I would maybe question that. But I love the picture.
That's an interesting comment. I can see the confusion there. I would hope that the flag sign that's out of the frame here, just above, that identifies the room, might help to assuage that concern. But it's a simple enough exercise to move it to the other end. If you feel like that's a.
The other thing, you don't label any of the other graphics like that, do we?
Yeah, we do. Here, constitutional delegates, the different chambers are identified, and the chambers identified over here as well. But in this case, it's close to the classroom, but there's a sign coming out from the wall there that says Capitol Classroom.
What's the material? What is the label? Is
It's
it?
part of the graphic. It's not like a separate
Oh.
dimensional sign. It's just part of the graphic.
Okay.
So it doesn't stand out and say, look at me, look at me. It's more of a, if you're looking at it, you get what you're looking at. I understand the concern though.
Madam Chairman, we might be able to, in this next review, just work with DI, make sure maybe it's lightened up a little bit.
But it's a little black looking in the rendering, but yeah, I think that would work.
We're obviously we're in the process of producing the graphics for the other hallway, so I'm not sure at what stage those are in. So I'd be concerned about changing the color of this type, if it would then not match the color of the type if that's already in the opposite hall. So
Nigel, I'll jump in here. We can make that color adjustment.
Sweet, thanks, Ashley. And just to clarify as well, the text in black here, which is actually a dark gray, is actually in plotted vinyl that goes directly onto the paint. And then the word citizens is an FCO that lives proud of the wall, just to highlight that word in the quote. That's the same execution we've used in all the quotes, where we've highlighted that most meaningful element within the quote.
Cool.
And just incidentally, to the treasurer's question on the Andrew Johnson connection, he was the president that signed the bill that made Wyoming a territory. So there is a good connection.
Oh, wow.
How about that? So, Nigel, I have a question, because it's kind of a narrow hall.
Yes.
With the graphics along the entire left-hand side, it just might feel cluttered or kind of over. cluttered. Just by the size of it.
Yeah. It would be the corridor on the opposite side is actually narrower. This is a little wider because it's accommodating the seating area as well. And we have graphics on both opposing walls there. So I think this matches that kind of balance. And because the images are somewhat subdued, they're not heavy, high contrast images. I think it creates an atmosphere without overwhelming as you move through the space.
This is Susanna. Just a comment about the identification of the image. And I agree that it kind of seems a little confusing to have that right there at that level. And maybe because it's at that level, it seems like it's wayfinding. And perhaps in addition to considering the brightness or the darkness of the color of it, maybe the position, like more of a photo credit, but also being within a reasonable view height is important too. So I didn't know if that was worth discussion or not.
The height was selected to meet sort of standard ADA practices for content like this. But I understand your question. Is that an overall concern that we need to make a change for?
I appreciate Suzanne bringing that up. I guess I don't share quite that much concern on it. Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I think just switching from left to right.
I'm just
Okay.
putting it the other end down here.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
By that.
I'll tell you that.
You know, even logically, it makes sense to see the caption after the image as you're reading from left to right. So I kind of like that even for that reason, even if it wasn't a potential confusion. So I think it's a smart move.
Yeah, I think the representative hit on something. I like it.
All right, excellent. Look at us making progress. Okay.
All right.
Now on to the civics lab. So sit back. We got lots to go through here. It's exciting stuff though, so I'm pleased to be able to show you it. You've seen a number of these things before, but there's been quite a few refinements to it. So we'll start marching through. Everybody knows where it is, just down the hall from you. But now we've started to identify all the different elements, and you'll see these little capsule numbers that you've probably got used to now seeing throughout the building as we've added and identified all the different elements. These numbers become really important. They're coded by color for the type of panels and activations they are. And the numbers are linked to the build and the art and the text template and everything corresponding to that particular element, so that we can track it from beginning to end and know exactly what we're talking about, exactly where it goes. So you'll see these numbers as we walk through the different elevations. Let's talk a bit about the style guide. No real big changes here. The color palette is still as we've settled it. We're making some minor adjustments based on your feedback from the core team and yourselves to the samples that we brought in our last meeting. So we're making those adjustments. There's some materials that we haven't need to add up in here. As we finalize those, we're looking at options for flooring tiles and ceiling tiles in that space. So those will get added once we have defined those for the room. We've made some refinements to the graphics themselves, added a little more texture to the backgrounds. That it's probably hard to read here, but it just adds a little complexity and richness to the colors in here. That will help to address some of the concerns about the colors that we heard from you last time. We wanted to demonstrate a little more how the line art and the doodles will interact with the images and the text on there. So things like circling words that are important, or connecting one thing to another, or illustrations, or artwork that actually engages with photographs and kind of stumbles off the side of it. So everything feels like it's all talking together and engaged together, and like someone's come in there with a pen and highlighted things that really spark their attention. I think the doodles are working really effectively. Those doodles will be more and more defined as we define the actual content. So these are just kind of placeholders, representational. Once that we lock in the content, our content developer and the team are making suggestions about just the right kind of doodle that will help to emphasize the message points and create engagement and curiosity. No changes to the typefaces that we've selected so far. So let's start with this. Oh, any questions about that before I move into the actual elevations? Nope. All right, let's go. Start with the central station. All right, so you've seen some reference to this. We've refined the build for this a little bit as well. We've figured out how we're going to make these winding, floating banners that circle around these columns. We've found a really good source to build these columns. This is coming together really beautifully. I got to see some samples of how we're going to twist and wind this thing and still make it stable out on the production floor, and it's looking fantastic. I'm so pleased with the way it's working. We'll start to walk through the different components here. On this first wall is the intro that kind of welcomes you to the space. So Amelia's going to kind of walk you through what that experience is like as you walk in the space and up to that screen that's your first stop on your tour.
Thank you, Nigel. Hi, everyone. We've briefly walked through these before. I think we did it in the April meeting. So we have these user journeys where we're working through the steps of this will take to interact with content. So in this case, when they're working, they'll be in a track loop. They'll touch the screen to start. They'll play a video. The video will autoplay over a big overview of the space and what we're looking for them to learn, and then they'll move into like a self-selection. Are you a visitor that's there by yourself, or are you is it a guided experience? There's a docent, or there's teachers, or there's anything like that in the room with most likely a group of kids from a class.
Excuse me, Emilio.
Yep.
Your voice sounds really echoey. So it's hard to hear what your words are.
You sound a little robotic, Emilio, or underwater or something.
Reading.
That's not good. That better?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
And I should be moving forward on the slides there, Emilio.
You can move now.
Okay.
Perfect timing. Okay, so then throughout this deck, like Ashley said earlier, we're gonna submit this to file stage. You're gonna see these wireframe storyboards. So these are not final design. It's meant to take the blue boxes that we looked at in the previous page and sort of spread them out. This is what the functionality will look, how this will function if we're looking in the context of a portrait screen with messaging on it. So there'll be a track loop with a call to action. Then the video will autoplay, and then you get to pick, are you a self-guided visitor, or is this a guided visitor experience? And then once you pick that, then you can go to the next page. It'll move through. There's a little, it's like onboarding instructions, maybe an infographic, sort of explaining to you what the lay of the land is in this room. As a self-guided visitor, and then there will be the same sort of layout for a guided visitor experience to the next page. There are going to be subtle differences, like in this case, it might be a number, or like make sure you only have like 4 to 6 people per station as you move through as you divide yourselves in the larger class. Yeah, so as we go through this deck, I'll walk through some of these, hit the high level key points to make sure that the experience still feels good and comfortable for everyone. That we're not missing the mark on like what the lessons are and what we're trying to have visitors learn about civics and about state government.
Right. Thanks, Emilio.
Yep.
So we have three walls to this. That's the first wall, that intro. The next wall is the Constitution Interactive, which we've stolen from the historic Supreme Court and converted or are in the process of converting that into a version that will engage the age groups that we anticipate in this space. So there's not just a change in the visuals, this is a change in the writing as well. So it'll be more at their reading level. And that's all in the process, and they're in text templates now. We're working on different ways to do that. So I'm sure you'll have a chance to look at those in the future, but that's what's happening on this wall. And then the third and final wall of the three is a station where you get to actually express the ideas that, or your commitment to what you want to do based on everything you've heard in the room and all those suggestions about the things you can do as a citizen. This is a place where you can write that down if you wish and pop it into this mailbox. So at some point, someone from your staff can grab those out and post them in this bulletin board, which will be protected by acrylic, so that people can't post their own, and we can edit which ones go up there, so that as people visit, they can see what other people have committed to, and then add their own commitment to that congregation of citizens. And that's basically the experience I just walked through for you, Emilio, which is
No, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
All right, sweet. Okay, that's the central station. Any questions? Nope. All right. I can't. If you guys like putting your hands up, I can't see. So sorry if I ignore you. I'm not ignoring you. All right, first wall, and this is as you walk into the room, see the central station, you look to your left, the Get Involved station is the first one you see. So you'll notice that we've updated the graphic in the background. All the other elements have pretty much stayed the same, except that we've evolved the analog interactive, which sits below this interpretive panel directly above it. So let's first look at the illustration, what we've combined. We've got the Wrangler building, the Atlas Theater, we've got the depot, and then the Paul Smith Children's Village over here that kind of create our montage of Cheyenne.
And Mr. Chairman, this is something the subcommittee hasn't seen based on your feedback from the last meeting about having it feel a little bit more like Wyoming. Nigel played with the idea about combining different elements, but we thought that maybe wasn't identifiable. And since kids are coming to Cheyenne, maybe some iconic downtown Cheyenne elements. The other piece that changed is we were originally trying to point out things in the wall graphic that you were impacted by government, and some of these do, actually all of them do, but to not worry as much about showing those here in the wall graphic as on the actual interactives.
Exactly. Thanks for that clarification. Any questions?
For that, Wendy.
Good. Right. So as you move through this deck in your moment of quiet reflection and review, you'll come to pages like this, which will outline all the different components on the wall, identify those with those little capsule numbers that I talked about. And then as you keep moving through it, it'll break down each one of those components. So you can kind of get a sense of what the size is, the different components that make up that piece, even down to the word count that we have the space for in each of the different areas on that particular panel. It'll indicate how it's going to be mounted to the wall. So you have everything you need to know about that particular panel, except the content that's going to finally live on there. But this is obviously critically important for us to move forward with, so we can start to build these things in time to make a solid installation. So you'll see this reoccurring throughout for each of the different panels, outlining the size and the amount of content that can live on those spaces, the different orientations, and also the color that we've applied to those particular panels. We'll also show the elements that will be FCOs. So these are part of the background illustration, but we're elevating them off the graphic in the background to give them some depth and impact. So the name of the station is always going to be FCO letters. That's just, sorry, I keep using this shorthand FCO. It's a flat cutout. So it's where we've taken that letter form, we've cut it out into a 1/4 inch deep piece of acrylic with a graphic on the front, the edges painted to match the particulars of that particular art, and then mounted flush onto the wall just to give it that depth. Then some elements from the illustration itself will also be included. In this case, it's the column at the far right, and we're using these columns as sort of anchor points on each corner, so it helps to divide the different sections of the room. So you kind of know that when you hit a column, you're kind of changing the conversation a little bit. And that's just kind of a nice way to sort of divvy up the space visually. Then we'll have that section for the graphic panels. Then we'll go through a section that focuses on the interactive. So we start here with the Drive interactive, right up under the Get Involved nameplate. And that's the experience that Emil is going to walk us through real quick here. Oh, I've included some of these builds because you'll see those throughout. They'll give you a sense of how this thing will be structured. It outlines, there's going to be two 32-inch touchscreens. This is the kind of styling that we're using, how things are recessed, the dimensionality of everything, how far out from the wall it's going to sit. All those things will help you to understand how this will work as a structure.
And then this one, there's parts and pieces to it. There'll be locations on a map that we're going to illustrate. We're working through the list right now, so that's why it says TBD at the top there. Each location will have a description of it. So what is it? What does it do? And then there'll be levels of government attached to it. So then what does each level of government involvement is with it? And then that's what the third line there is. So the levels of government, I think we were clear on this, is federal, state, and local for us. And then there'll be different vehicles that kids will navigate through. So we have a car, motorcycle, camper, bicycle, and a skateboard. So kids will be able to switch that around. So this is the basic user flow of that. Like you'll move this car down the road, you stop at a marker, modal will take over the screen, and then you learn about it, close the modal, and you keep going. So this is an example of that, again, just that experience to get us in that mindset of this is what a landscape screen looks like. We probably will have a menu at the bottom. The map will take over most of the screen. There's hotspots. You drive around, you stop somewhere, then this takeover happens. Let's say in this case, we're looking at a school. You can switch through federal, state, or local to see what level of involvement each level of government has. Then you close that and you're back into the driving mode, so to speak. We have these detail information. It's kind of what Nigel was talking about. This is sort of our version of a build page where there's details that are very much behind the scenes sort of thing. But they're important. So we need to know how much room we have for content. Then next, So then we also have, then through navigation, we can filter these hotspots to say like, I just want to look at the things that the state government runs or it's involved in. So hotspots could change color based on what level you have. Next. And then this one is the vehicle changing. So you can pick a change vehicle and you can change whatever you want to drive. I think you saw on the build, there's two screens. Both screens do the same, have the same activation on them. So we're not racing each other. We're not competing against each other. We're like just going through. Two visitors can go through the same map and learn the same content on each screen.
Let me back up to the at the very start of your visit here.
Mm-hmm.
What's the example of a location? Would it be a school, or when you say locations, what are some of the examples you have in mind?
Right, like schools. We're talking about parking areas, city parks, a museum. I think for now, or hold on, I have a list. Andy.
Okay, so we're just
the
talking
DMV, a library, a restaurant. We're looking at it being a really good one. post office, library, fire station, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
And then in terms of orientation of the two screens, are they opposite each other? So you can have kids standing on either side of the piece of furniture? Or are they oriented towards the
They're in front of it. It's like a
They're,
so all
they're
the
side
viewers
by
are
side
all
facing the wall.
side by side facing the wall?
So, and I know Emilio said this a little while ago, but I want to reiterate that the visuals here in the storyboard are only to help help us to understand how the experience is going to work. They don't represent the final graphics that are going to be on the thing. So the map will look obviously different from this. It'll be more representational of Wyoming, and it'll highlight the particular locations that we want people to learn from. So the kids start to understand that as they move through their world, the things that seem sort of innocuous are actually impacted by different levels of government. And they start to experience and appreciate that it's not just a school, it's not just a park, it's a park that has there's tentacles from all different parts of government that help to make the park the best park it can be, and who you can in fact talk to help make that happen. What level of government? Which kind of leads us into the next analog experience, which I want to put a graphic up here so because when you look at the line art for it, it's kind of hard to get what's going on. So I wanted to show you a graphic of what this might look like. This isn't meant to be final, but it gives you a really good sense of what the experience is like. It's the who you're going to call station is kind of based on the old switchboard idea of the past, but we have a single ear microphone that you can take off there and put in your put up to your ear. Emilio, did you want to walk through this, or should I just keep going?
You can keep going.
Okay, so we'll have a list of 6 different sort of issues and problems that you might see out there in the world. So maybe it's a pothole or there's something wrong. I don't know. 6 different issues. There's the park benches have been destroyed at the park, or there's a pothole, or there's this, that, or the other. And we're trying to get them to think about, so who would you call to let them know about that pothole? Is it local, or is it state, or is it federal? Does it matter which road it's on? So you select the problem with this button. You put the microphone, not the microphone, the earpiece to your ear, and then you decide who you're going to call. And let's say you selected local government for a pothole. Well, it's probably likely that they're the ones that are responsible for that. So you'd get somebody answering the phone, and that's what you'd hear in your earpiece, and saying you reached the right number. But if you decide to call the federal government about the pothole, you get the answer, you've reached the wrong department. There's someone out there who can help you. Please try again. And that would give them opportunity to try one of the other options. It's simple for a lower grade level way of helping them to connect between the things that they see out in the world that need addressing and the people that can help them address those things. Does that make sense how that works?
It does. It's kind of a real life experience,
Yeah. Yeah. So most of the time we're going to put people on hold. That'll be really great elevator music.
And we could actually have a taped message that says, due to budget considerations, we're not fixing potholes. We're calling.
All right. Well, that was me to me. Sorry. All right. So this is actually the bill to give you a sense of how it works with the microphone thing. We play with the ideas, the moving plugs into different holes to connect, but there's some real issues for longevity of that piece of equipment, and how well that's going to stand up to the kids. So this is close to that experience without sabotaging ourselves within the first month of kids playing with this thing. I think, did I explain this whole thing? I think I did, didn't I, Emilio? I think so, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you walk through this order.
Good, yeah. I took your thunder. I'm terrible.
No, you're good. That was great.
All right. Okay, so we're finished with the get involved wall. We turn to our right and we look at the legislative branch station. And that has got all these things going on that we're really gonna engage the students that walk into this room, as well as some of the parents and other tourists as well, we hope. We are using the chambers as sort of the central backdrop for this. We have all these elements identified, the different types of experience. There's a really nice mix of analog and digital in all these walls. So let's start to dig in. Well, first of all, there's the line art, the illustration that goes on the backdrop, and we've kind of reconfigured the chamber a little bit so it creates a really nice space for one of the central interactives here. Any questions about this? This is kind of a refinement from conversations we had while we were there. All right. Again, we break down all the panels that are going to be in the space. We define everything that's going to be on those panels, how they're mounted, the amount of real estate we have. You'll be able to dig into all of these and bring any questions or not as you move through. There's a few more FCOs on this wall. That little clock above the dais is going to be a dimensional element, the name, the columns that anchor both sides of the room. And then these two elements, these fantastic lights, are actually going to float away from the wall a little bit and appear to come from the ceiling, so that they add even more dimensionality to the depth and experience of that particular wall. The first build, I wanted to show you a render of this so you kind of get how it works. But we are echoing the dais in I think this one's, well, both chambers have something very similar. But we have these little lecterns on there, and these lecterns are going to hold the interactive panels. This comes out from the wall, and then in a artifact case here we have a couple of the. Why can I never remember the names of these things? What are these? Oh my goodness.
Gavels, Nigel.
Gavels, so that just every time I see them, I go to mallet, and then I want to play crochet. But we've got these we've got this ping pong ball is fabulous. It's something they use to break decisions in one of the chambers. So we've got a little gameplay going on between a couple of gavels and this ping pong in this artifact case over here, which I think will be fun for the kids, but also tell a story that ties directly into the idea of the compromise that focused from this interactive that sits right here against the wall. So that kind of gives you a placeholder for where that lives.
Is that the color you're going for?
The color?
Yeah.
It's pretty close to it, yeah. You're not
I
seeing
just love the color of
blue.
split pea soup.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I just love the color of split pea soup,
I actually like split pea soup, but that's
I do.
British, so
Money, the color of money.
this color money.
Color of money. All right.
Treasure. And Mr. Chairman, Treasurer Meyer, DI will be bringing actual physical samples of the colors in for you, including how they plan to treat it to make it look like it's drawn in 3 dimensions. So those will be coming at a future meeting for you to review.
All right.
And something we mentioned before, but I should probably reiterate, is we've kind of established a palette of colors that focus on the different types of messaging as you move through. So the red, orange, green, blue will always be in that same sequential order. They'll always know that when they go to the green panel, it's the how part of the message. When you go to the red, it's the what part of the message. And when you go to the orange, it's the blue. I mean, it's the blue. It's the who part of the message. Finishing with blue, which is about their role as a citizen. So that way they understand how the information is being delivered to them, what they can anticipate if they go to a particular color. It's just a really good way of sort of establishing an expectation level from your audience in a subtle sort of way. So there's the build, and Emilio, if you can walk us through this, it's fairly complex, but once you're doing it, I think they'll find it's really fairly simple.
Right. I'm not gonna walk through every wireframe after this because that will take us an hour. But we talk high level. We're gonna have a visitor. They're gonna walk through one of these screens on either side of the gavels, and then they'll be able to choose one of these scenarios here. So we're coming up with this role-playing scenarios where we're looking at school zone crossings or nutrition in school and things like that. And then we have characters. The visitors will actually get to play legislators. And those are the playable characters, and then there'll be constituents will be the non-playable characters, which will be the ones that will basically provide you input during a hearing, quote unquote. And then there's a storyline that we'll go through. So there's a consensus or like a moment where we want to get to vote, and then we'll vote. Legislators will vote, so the playable characters will vote, and then we end up with a result. We have different possible outcomes that we're working through in content development to see, and they're all because it's role playing. It's all based on what decisions you make. So at some certain points, the playable characters, the legislators, will get to say, "I agree with this" or "I don't disagree with this," and then the non-playable characters will give you feedback based on your response, and then eventually we'll get to this might happen like 2 or 3 rounds. We don't want to make it too long, but then there'll be a vote. In this particular activation, both kiosks are playing within the same world. So one of them will pick a scenario, and then the other one has to agree that that's the one we're gonna do. So then we're both kiosks are playing the same role-playing the same scenario. So then, but there might be, one legislator is for it, the other on the other side we might be against it, and then we're trying to get to one of the predetermined results that we already have, but it'll all be based on responses and their reactions.
Anything in this whole area here about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and responsibility of the citizen, and what happens if any of those rights are diminished or abridged, or so people understand that that's where the power comes from as a citizen?
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, we've been talking about what the government can do for people for the last half hour, and it's the whole thing that the citizens actually have to do it necessarily for themselves, and how can they do that, and how is the government I guess restrained so they can do that. And we don't really talk about where all the money comes from. It just comes from the government, and then you get into this argument kind of like where, like probably 60% of the people in America think that food comes from the grocery store, and it just, I don't know if you have anything that actually gets to the basics of what country and what makes the rights of the citizen allow the government to do only what they allow it to do.
Yeah, Treasurer Meyer, we actually addressed that fairly specifically in like 3 different places. The constitutional interactive obviously will address that in some ways to set that up. On the get involved wall, the whole point of that is to understand the citizen's role and its engagement with government. So that's like the central theme on that particular wall. And then on the final area, which focuses on separation of powers, there's checks and balances interactive, 2 different types of interactives, both of which show the role of the citizen and how they play their part in the process between the 3 branches of government, and vocalizing their ideas and their pro and con viewpoints. And then finally, as you get back to the central station, there's an opportunity for you to actually say what you're going to do based on all those things you've learned, because the last panel on each wall is about what you as a citizen can do. It's explicitly saying 4 different things on each wall that you can do, the role you can play within the government that will hit on these different subjects. So it's a really important question, and it's critical that we include that message, and I believe we are. So I'm
Yeah,
something
I
to
guess each one of these things, you know, that you can actually draw back, I think, a connection. If you lose your right to vote, what does the government look like? You know, and we're talking about all the things the government can do for you, but yeah, those rights are the interaction between everything that you're setting out there and that responsibility to vote. That's, I think, the one thing in our society that we're really losing is people don't have that connection or that need to vote, and what happens if they stop. And they've almost stopped in a lot of different areas. So something in there, if you can get kids to learn that, yeah, that's one of the biggest responsibilities that they have is to vote or, you know, and I think the only thing that maybe is scare them saying, well, if you can't vote, what happens? You know, so there's education, and then I don't think it's indoctrination saying that they have to vote or should vote, but that's one of the most, I think, the rights that we forget to educate, you know, and I hope that we are educating people, you know, that they need to take that responsibility to vote.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say we go beyond that, because we're fully aware that a lot of the kids that walk in there don't actually meet the age requirements to vote yet. But there are still things they can do, and we kind of list those things out. Even as a 12-year-old middle schooler, there are things that they can do as a citizen. Just bringing us back to that founding principle of this whole exercise, that we know that this is the people's house. So let's make it matter to the people and show them how they can be a participant in this building and in the government of Wyoming. Awesome.
Nigel, I want to take a moment just to welcome former Representative Western, who just walked into the room. It's good to see you, Representative.
Thank you, Senator.
And wait to catch up here in a minute, and glad you can stop by.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. We'd like to learn about your new job after this.
Mr. Treasurer, I can tell you all about it.
I bet we could have about an hour-and-a-half seminar, and we would all be riveted.
Yeah.
We're trying to finish up this Capitol building, and where you operated for quite some time. So
it looks beautiful.
Nigel, thank you for letting me interrupt real quickly to welcome.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Amelia, we kind of dived in on you there. Is there anything else you want to cover?
No, we can flip through these really quick. So there'll be a scenario selection. There'll be an explanation there following that, and then of what the issue is, and then keep going. They'll choose a character. Keep going. Then this is sort of, again, a representation of what this committee hearing could feel like, where there are characters there. You as a role-playing visitor, you're in the center, so then you hear all these voices. Then you get to a decision point where you get to make a choice based on all the input you've heard. So then based on the choice you make, that the other characters react to that, including the other person that's playing there with you on their kiosk. And then we just continue on until, we go through this a few times and the ready to vote bar will fill up. So now we're ready to do that, and there'll be a result, and then there will be some sort of reflection after that.
Mr. Chairman, Amelia, I have a question. I love this scenario, but let's say I just bring my niece and there's no other kid to play with her. Is this based on having to have 2 players?
No, there'll be a countdown. So you can start it, and then if no one joins, then you play. Think of it like those arcade games where there is 2 players, but then if no one plays, then you just run on your own.
Good question.
Yep.
As you can tell, Representative, this is work that we're doing to finish up the civics lab, which is one of the first stop-off points that all of those bus loads that come down to visit the legislature and throughout the year. And this is work that we're doing to make that interactive experience hopefully special for them. So
this is for legislators too, right?
Yeah, we're actually, it's going to be mandatory first stop.
I feel like that's a good suggestion, yeah.
Good point.
Everybody's newly elected and incoming for 2 years.
Yeah, boy, and the points that made by the treasurer were spot on, I think, on that front. Anyway,
Yeah,
please continue.
we definitely want them all to play the finding common ground game. I think that would be good. All right. So the next interactive was move down the wall is this slider. It's a thing where you slide these boxes around to make sure that the narrative of how a bill becomes law, the kids understand that, and it's just an oversized version of those little slider things you used to use as a kid, and we've talked about this before. There's another interactive where we have these 6 portraits of legislators, and so that we can talk about how they have more than just one job. This is a citizen legislator, so we want them to understand that they may be your representative, but they also work in your town as a rancher or who knows what. So that's kind of a breakdown, Amelia, for how this interactive works.
Yeah, so we started collecting a list of potential representatives that we'll highlight on the wall. They'll have an interesting story that goes with it. And we're starting to look at how, based on the information we have and what images we can get and all that, like how we're gonna create the sequence. There's a few TBDs like you can see there, so we're working through those. But yeah, we're a pretty good start now on these. I'll go to the next one. So yeah, so there'll be an official portrait screen. So when you walk up to the wall, kind of like that drawing that Nigel had up there, there'll be a portrait frame, and then when we start moving the slider, it'll transition into this more creative, following the design language that we've set in the space, the doodles and the handwritten notes. We'll be careful not to make it look like we defaced a portrait or something like that, but we'll make it fit within the design language. And then the third panel, the third step in this slider will be like the actual storytelling portion of it. We'll share why, what do they do and what was their real job, quote unquote.
So I'm
And then
curious,
this is just a really rough, crude storyboard of that sequence.
so Wendy, I'm curious on the names that were up there. They were all recently passed legislators. So but none of them go before 1990. So is that, what's the thought process on who you're gonna put up there? And
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, that's a great question. DI just screen grabbed some shots of, in fact, they may even be current members. We are working through that. As you might recall from package 2, you have both a design side of review, and then you'll also be receiving a content review. So your core team will do some initial suggestions and work with DI for, in this particular instance, we'll probably want to look at some folks who maybe have more colorful jobs that might be of interest to kids, and we'll try to do a variety of different types of people just for engagement with kids. So we'll be making an initial cut, and then we'll give that to you before DI for your review and approval before DI gets into doing a lot more with the activation.
I'd love it if we could prioritize jobs and careers that the students are interacting with on a daily, monthly basis. So like a teacher, like somebody that they're like, oh, I know what that job is. I know how that impacts my life.
Yeah, you probably want to stay away from college administrators. You want to go to some of that other stuff, but no, that's a very good point, Representative. I'm glad you brought that up because I think we'll have to give some thought to who we put up there and make sure that it's a pretty broad base. It's on some of the careers that are going to matter to kids and things like that. So, anything else on that one?
how can you not have Charlie Scott up there?
Yeah, exactly.
And yes, and Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, I should mention that similar to package 2, where you didn't choose anyone currently in office other than actually, I guess we didn't even do it on the statewide elected. We always tried to avoid anyone currently in office. So if you're not selected, that would be why.
Senator Scott is from Harvard. He still should be considered, I think.
That's the only person that served over half the term of the whole bunch.
Almost a half century. It's pretty. Nigel, I don't know if you are aware that Senator Scott has been in the state senate for, I think, 47 years now. 47 years.
Yeah, he was in the House to start with.
Was he in the House before that? Okay, so maybe not quite 47 in the Senate, but 47 in the legislature.
And Mr. Chairman, one thing that DI did note is an activation like this really lends itself well to digital format. If you've done analog here, it makes it harder over time for it to be scalable or changeable. So this is one that digital really was the right answer in this space, so that you can change them out, keep them fresh, add more over time.
Mr. Chairman, are we using the term real job? Because I think that diminishes what they do in the legislature. Like, I think that you play both roles. Both roles are equally important. And I don't like the term.
Maybe their day job, yeah.
Yeah, like, I think that just undermines that this is really who they are, not really a legislator. I just don't want to downplay that.
Yeah, interesting. That's a good point to bring up. My brain's working and nothing's happening. I come up with it. Something different. Yeah, we might want to think about that though, Nigel. That's a good point.
Is how do their life experiences affect their legislative, not necessarily performance, but expertise or something, just that's kind of the, because a lot of people will see somebody be on the appropriations committee that has never held a job, in any manner, shape, or form. So they kind of figure out, well, how did they get there, talking about all the money that the state is paying and how I don't, there's just, maybe there's a lot of different storylines I think you could travel down. But if you want to try to put it in the minds of a kid, I guess let's survey the kids, and then we can maybe find something that will work for them.
Well, Nigel and Emilio, I think let's give some thought to the real job thing, and the rest of us can think about it too. And as we go through file stage, the file stage will come to us pretty soon. Rachel, is that correct? Is that what I heard you say on this one?
Yes, and actually Ashley said that yes, we will be sending that very soon. I think, our intent was to reinforce that this is a citizenship legislator, and that our citizen government, and so want to reinforce that their full-time job isn't necessarily to be a legislator. So if we look at, full-time versus real job versus day job, I think we can look at options there and get back to you guys for approval.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. And we are very proud of the fact that Wyoming is one of 2 or 3 states who have citizen legislature. So being able to tell that story is what I know you'll come up with something. Yeah. Okay, anything else, folks? Please continue.
All right, let's go. And just a reminder that what we're wanting you to focus on today and in this review is the build, the functionality, the approach, that we're taking to all these elements. The actual content, like the name of this and the text that lives in it, are in a separate path, which you'll be faced with in short order. But welcome any input that we get, but you will have an opportunity to talk about all the actual content separate from this as well. So names like the real job and any other name or copy that you see in this, aren't nailed down. We needed to put something here so we can call this something. That's a really good insight though, Amy. I appreciate that. All right, and then we have the slider. Okay, let's move to the executive branch, turn to our right again, and we have a whole other wall to look at. Full of really varied experiences. There's some really cool builds on this wall that I think will really add some depth and fun to that engagement. You can see how many different parts and pieces there are in there. And let's have a look at the illustration. That's a directive we kind of got, was to focus a little more on the on this reception area, where we are able to include this portrait and some other details in there as the backdrop. And here's the FCOs that are going to look proud of that wall. You'll notice that this actually has a few columns in here, but they help to break up the space because we're talking about I'm sorry, go on.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to ask if you would be willing to pause on the executive branch right here.
Yeah.
We'll back up in about 10 minutes. There's a lunch here. And I want to let the crew grab their lunch, come back after this little 10-minute pause, and then you can pick it back up. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. You should feel free to eat in front of me. I won't mind at all.
Yeah.
We're gonna buy you lunch.
All right. Sorry, not making you that lunch, but so let's take a 10-minute pause if that's okay, and we'll come right back to you.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
Is that Representative Nichols who
There.
Think of it a lot more. And maybe that's my problem.
You guys are the other one. Thank you for letting us take that.
Every day.
We're ready to go again.
Really needed to take that one. So, we're back. Some of us are finishing up on half the sandwich here. And you guys, please continue. Appreciate the dialogue today.
Awesome. I had a fabulous cheese stick.
Does sound kind of good.
It was really good. So, hey, I was just, as we've been going through this stuff, it made me want to just call out just the brilliant people I'm surrounded by here at DI. They've done some really awesome work, and they're so dedicated and passionate about this project. So, I just wanted to thank them in front of you folks for everything that they put into making this a reality. But anyway, they're good people, and thanks to all of them, from the designers to the people making sure that this stuff is getting made right, and the copy's getting written well and well researched. And we just got some good people here, and all of that is also a tribute to you folks in the room as well, for all the input that you've given us over time. You've faced some big challenges trying to figure out what the right way to do all this stuff is, and you've helped us to narrow down to the things that are critical, and getting those things together, and they're up on the walls now, and they're getting ready to go into this room, and I'm excited about what we've accomplished and what we'll finish up with this. So thank you to everyone. Shall we dive into the executive branch? Here's our line art. Any questions or comments on that?
Well, thank you for mentioning all the people who have contributed to this effort, Nigel, and I think this subcommittee never forgets that. So please continue with the executive branch.
Sounds good. We did talk about the FCOs, didn't we? There's one light dangling from the ceiling up there, and then there's the FCO type and some columns that separate the different areas in the executive wall. I wanted to bring you this earlier render of this what we've been calling the agency cabinet, or the agency armoire. I don't know, whatever you'd like to refer to it as. But this is a good way to kind of spell out how this thing works. It's one of the first big prominent interactives you have on this wall as you move past the graphic panel. There's 20 different little doors, nooks in this thing. As some drawers, some doors. They open from the right and the left, just to make it kind of whimsical and engaging. And we've designated the drawers for the different departments different agencies that are gonna live in behind these doors. And there's a bunch, the color codings for all the different ways that we're gonna engage them. Some of them are just gonna be a graphic, but there's others that's gonna be graphic with our artifact and a light to highlight that artifact. There's gonna be some sort of light effect with the graphic. There's going to be audio with a graphic, so some sort of sound you might hear, or there's even going to be a scent, something you might smell, and we'll kind of be careful with that, that you can that relates to a particular department. All that stuff is in the process, and it's part of the content. Figuring out exactly what those things are is part of the content exercise. But as a build, it's important to understand that those components are incorporated into this physical structure as well. So it's going to be more than just pulling out a drawer, opening a door. It'll engage with you in much higher levels than that as well, or lower levels. I don't know. It depends on the smell we decide on. So on the exterior, there's going to be a label that or a question that identifies the agency. The visitor opens that door and they learn something about the agency that's represented there. And then the next that's the cabinet. The next interactive is the executive desk, or the governor's desk, and we've seen this before, but I want to remind you of what that structure feels like with the sort of simple build that we highlight with this sort of comic style doodle around the edges. It lives up perpendicular to the wall between the cabinet and the bookshelf. And it's got 8 drawers altogether, 4 on either side. The middle drawer isn't of center isn't functioning. That's where we have to hide the the digital components, the CPU and other elements that make the screen that's on the top of here do its magic. And then Amelia is going to walk us through what happens when you walk up to it.
So we have, this is our high level site map. So we have the statewide elected officials. That's our list, and the a Wyoming citizen. And then we have the desk drawers. There are shadow boxes or artifact cases, whatever you want to call it, but there'll be things in the drawer, and then there'll also be this object for the digital table. So then the digital table will have all this content. We've looked at this before, so we don't have to deep dive into it, but we're going to talk about the current holder, a little bio, roles and responsibilities, any fun facts, and then this connection or relationship to other officials, or how they work together, something like that. Yeah, go to the next one. Yeah, so the object or this thing on the drawer will look totally different than like a artifact. So you'll know that this is the thing that you pick up, you place it on the table, and then the table will react to the fact that you placed something on it. There'll be animations and reveals and all this magic that happens, and then you'll be able to control content on the table as you explore. And then this is our, again, storyboards of the same things that we've been looking at. Can you just flip through this quicker? So there'll be options to navigate. You can flip, reveal things. And
am I going too fast, Emilio?
no, you're good. You're good. In the interest of time, I'm trying to go through this quick. So every time you reveal new content, new animations will happen. So it'll feel like a fresh experience every time you make a selection or you place another object on the table. It'll always feel new. And if you take everything off, nothing will be there, and then it will reset and it will come back to a little of a track loop.
Okay. Any questions about that before we move on? I feel like we've gone over it a few times now, so should make sense. Oh, all right.
I think we're good. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Next down the wall, we have the bookshelf. And that's sitting right here. This kind of breaks out the build because it's a fairly complex piece of furniture with there's a simple panel here that explains how it works, but then we have the books above it that you can pull out and look at. Not all the way out far enough for you to look at the front and back covers and the spine. And then once you find the books you like, there's the buttons below that you can select the particular categories, and then the button and printer output for the listing that Amelia is going to walk us through. Sorry, I just told everything.
No, you're fine. You're good. We can go through it. We've looked at this before, so it's nothing new here.
Okay. Any questions about so we're finished with the executive wall. Any other questions about that? One thing I should remind you that on each wall, the last station is the passport check-in, and it's on the elevations there, and we'll have the build for it later on in this deck for how it's built. But that's something that's reoccurring that reminds people, students. It's right adjacent to the panel. It reminds students of what they can do, what role they can play, and then they get the opportunity to make an imprint on their takeaway passport, so that they can sort of celebrate the fact that they went through that particular wall, and they have something to take home to show mom or dad. So move on to the judicial branch and separation of powers, which share a wall at the end. And there's the artwork for that wall. all the different components. The judicial branch, as you know, is much shorter because of the experience they can have just down the street. The background illustration on the left focusing on the historic chamber, on the right focusing on the rotunda, where we've got a chess game in progress on that black and white tile floor. And then these are the different panels inside there, the judicial elements, and then what we're calling powers at play for the separation of powers station. This one's a fairly complex piece. We're trying to cover the same kind of content, and we're following that same color system, the red, orange, green, and blue, to tell that story. And here, and it also includes a couple of micro interactives on this wall. And then there are just a few FCOs that will be on that wall as well. The columns as usual to help separate content, and then the naming plaques to identify the areas. And then we move to the gear interactive. There's an interpretive panel above that gear that helps to you understand the separation of powers and the roles of checks and balances within the government. And then the gear interactive helps you to understand how that works. We've wrestled a lot with the Gear Interactive. How do we make this thing work? So I want to kind of walk you through where we're playing right now. This isn't finalized. There's more work to be done, but so you kind of understand what this is trying to do. You'll be able to dig into this more when we review, but it gives you a really good idea of the goal here. So we have a partially complete wall of gears that have some existing gears on the wall already. Those gears, for the benefit of pinch fingers, are covered by a piece of acrylic. And poking through this acrylic are some pegs that you can add additional gears to. And below, you'll find those gears. There's 6 of them that you can select and place up in there. And they're visual clues on the wall here that help students to figure out what gears might go in what place. First of all, the 3 gears that represent the 3 branches of government. So you could pop those up on the wall as well. And the internal mechanism of each of those gears talks about the powers that are unique to those particular branches of government that only those hold. And then the smaller gears that you add around talk about the different actions and balance checks that you can use between each branch. And then the gold gears represent the voice of the voter, and those gears live on there and are engaged with the different wheels that make up this mechanism that we call the Wyoming government. We're looking into the possibility that the user would actually even be able to add the crank onto the wall from inside this bucket below. And our suggestion there would they could put the crank on any one of these voter gears so that they could make the action of the government work as a voter. There may be some mechanical issues with that where we have to lock it in place, but if we do, it'll be right in the heart of the experience. So people understand that citizens have a critical role in what is a successful government. This is where we have both the pros and the cons, the veto and the override, the appoints and the rejects that make a working government. They're not all we're gung ho. We've passed everything we want to pass, and everything's a yes. Sometimes there are no's. Sometimes it feels like you're going backwards. But all those things are part of government working successfully, and this gears kind of help you understand that. It can't do every possible thing we would like this to do, but I think it goes a long way down the road of helping people to understand that government is a lot more complex than just a bunch of yes votes. It's compromise, it's understanding where things work and when they shouldn't work, and that it's really doing its job when something didn't pass or when it did pass. Any questions?
Nigel, I have one.
Yeah.
How have these exhibits with pieces that could be picked up and walked away with, what's been the experience there? Is there any I mean, I have concern. I mean, they're cool. Why would you not want to steal one that says, you know, the executive bridge? But like,
Everything else sorts of stuff about you.
flip tags on them and have it deep as you.
Well, I'm sure you might want to check the auditor's office.
But I think it can be, way more likely to be innocent, but people could think they're
Yeah.
cool too. And I say this as somebody who's accidentally worn home bowling shoes more than once. Not on purpose.
Or do we just go ahead and make multiple copies to have as
Yeah.
backup?
Ultimately, yes, we would have to make multiple copies. Even if we weren't worried about people running off with them, a functioning piece like this it's always good to have backups. But
Question, the one thing I don't see up there is the economy, which makes all of them right. I don't know if you could have a gear that nothing works until you put the economy gear on there, so that actually makes everything right.
you're right. There's not.
That's the person's hand power actually turning the crank.
Yeah, maybe that should, what you do is put a label on the hand crank that says economy.
Yeah, that's possible. And as I've said, we're trying to nail down the content, but and that kind of input's really important and help us to refine this to make sure that this works effectively. It has the correct kind of message within the limits of what a thing like this can do. It's not going to be able to tell every story we would like it to tell, but we'd like to tell the most important ones. The main point here is this thing going to work? I think the concern about will these things walk away? It's a valid one, and there's a limit to what we can do in a space like this. We know that multiple museums use elements that could very much walk away. There are different components that kids and other people interact with that are not anchored down. They're not chained to the wall or anything. The experience, the value of the experience and that engagement and the level of trust and autonomy that people have to be able to have that experience and relate with that physical thing and make it part of the element the way they think it should be, kind of outweighs the danger and the concern of, well, will they walk away? And yes, at some point maybe one of them or two of them will. But for the other 1,000 times where someone's actually learned something and because they got to feel that gear in their hands and plop it onto the peg and see, oh, this works, these things are lighting up now. I don't know, it's a reward danger kind of balance that we need to strike. And I think overall, I think we believe that the experience is probably worth it here, and the takeaway is probably worth it, as long as it's not the wrong takeaway.
Another part of education that you're telling people this, the kids this stuff, but it's okay to get them to think about asking questions because they're always curious, but lead them to asking questions, then it gets their mind working in another way where they go outside, they leave the room, go outside, and if it makes them curious, they'll dive a little bit deeper into a topic that necessarily doesn't, tell the whole story that you're trying to tell.
Excellent. Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of stuff in the museum that is not secured down. And yeah, some of it does walk away, but way more we have to replace stuff because it's wearing out. That is why we're replacing it most of the time. So I do think we will definitely want extra.
Well, I love the concept, and I was sitting here thinking about the time we find ourselves in on a national level. And I think this will be really valuable for young people to see that it takes all three branches of government to make this thing work. And you take one of those out of the puzzle piece and it's just not going to work. So I like it.
Awesome. Okay. This thing was a struggle for us, and I think we we were able to figure it out, and I'm delighted that we got to this place. I think kids will enjoy this engagement. Okay, there's a little bucket below, and it's only a foot away from the wall, so there's still plenty of room for kids to lean forward and put those wheels on. We'll double check the depth of that to make sure that's not an issue. Finally, there's the last panel, not the last panel, but not the last interactive on this wall, that incorporates 3 screens, and those screens offer another engagement that Amelia is going to walk us through.
It's a similar scenario built, an interactive built around scenarios, kind of the way the legislative wall is. But in this case, we're not playing like an individual. We're each visitor role plays as a branch. So there's a more general taking the concepts that you're learning on the gears, sort of putting them into action in context. So you might have seen a check or a power on the gear, and then you're gonna get to do that in this role-playing scenario. So each screen represents a branch. Similar to the other one, we are pushing into, you can play by yourself, or you can play with 3 other people or 2 people, and then if no one joins, then it's a non-playable branch in this case. We have 3 scenarios right now that we're looking at, and then they're a little more fun. This might be towards the end of the experience, so trying to not be so literal, and we're talking about impeachment, but we're doing more like not in the context, in such a real world context, so that are more fun. Then there'll be levels and ranges. So we're right now in the content development, we're trying to sort out if each scenario has a level, or if we do different levels for each scenario. That's part of the process that we're going through. So this is our first draft, sort of looking at content and how it'll all work together. You go to the next one. And then the next one kind of breaks that down into like, this is the user journey. So you walk up to a screen, it'll tell you like, you pick the executive branch screen, but do you want to do that or you want to change? If you change, then it sort of waterfalls to the other screens. Pick an issue, then you play out the scenario. There'll be decision points and passive points. So if I'm the executive, I don't get to make decisions all the time. I have to wait for the other branches to do things, and then I get to make a choice. Again, because it's a sort of role-playing game, the choices have consequences. So then we have to have different storylines where they end. So we're not always going to end up at the same place. We might have 2 or 3 predetermined storylines based on the scenario and the choices that visitors make. Then there'll be a reflection at the end, like in the other one, where you sort of learn about what just happened and why it was important, or why the result was the result. And then we have again, the storyboard wireframe out of each one. We start looking at it from like, these are the 3 screens, like if you were to walk up to the wall, and then what happens when one of them gets activated, the next one, yeah, or 2 of them, and then the 3rd one is not, like, and it's sort of, and then eventually I think the next page is where we switch back to like just an individual kiosk. So now we're working through the process of what each of the journey. You just keep flipping through it.
Now, I'm assuming, Amelia, that there won't be sound on these panels, correct?
There won't be.
Yeah. They'd be too close proximity to.
One another, yeah, they're pretty close. Yep.
All right, so that's that last major interactive, but we have one more kind of special moment on that wall before the kids finish with the space, and that's sort of that's the vault door at the end. It's going to be a build out from the wall, just about 7 inches popping out from the wall, that will incorporate a sort of a reimagined version of the vault doors that you see down on the garden level. And then Emil, if you want to walk through how that experience engages, we've talked about it before, but just to clarify.
Right. Just to clarify, there'll be 4 quotes hidden within the vault, so that when you open the door, it'll pull up 1 every time the vault door is open. So go to the next thing. Yeah, so that's the door is closed or almost closed, and then like when visitor opens it, then one of those within the mirror, there'll be a section that will light up with a quote and a doodle and sort of tie the message all together. Go to the next one. Yeah. So in this drawing, we're trying to place things in. There's like the top half of the mirror is where the quotes will be, and then we're dividing that into 4 squares, lack of a better term right now. And then each one of those will be the area of one of the quotes. So they'll light up randomly to open. The quotes will be open-ended. So then if there's one visitor or multiple or like a whole family opens the vault, the message will apply either way. And then it becomes a photo op moment.
Any questions? All right. Those are all our walls. There are a couple of components that you'll see throughout the room. So we held those to last to kind of walk you through. And the disappointing part of this is that I had a bunch of these micro interactives in my suitcase to bring with me on the trip over there, but that suitcase is now by my desk, and we'll figure out a way to get those in front of you so you get a chance to play with them and see how they work. I'm just repeating the line art that you've seen already of those for the flip page turn interactive, the slider interactive, the spinning circle reveal interactive, the sliding magnifying interactive, and the kind of trapdoor cat door interactive. The turn and reveal. So I've got samples of most of those that are ready for you guys to see. I mean, obviously they're still in process, and it's gone through engineering. We're figuring out the best way to make them so that they can stand up to the kids that will be engaging with them. And also be able to be changed and updated so you can adjust messaging as you wanted to. They're decent size, so that like this one's 11 inches across, so it allows us to have content that's at a legible text size and attracts attention from the kids as they engage with it, so that the especially the younger kids that are more interested in these sort of simple hand gestured kind of interactives feel like that they are celebrated as well and have an opportunity to make this an engaging experience for them as well. And then lastly is the passport check-in, which is just a simple pedestal with this what do you call it? A embossing machine that will be attached to the top of that pedestal that they can slide their passport in. There'll be guidelines on the passport paper, so they know where to put it in and which is the right blank for the particular station that they're at, and then crank the little lever, and that'll leave an emboss on their passport. With a little panel above that explains what they should do. Around the room, across the top in some sort of faux crown molding, which is lit from below, will be these FCO panels that kind of mimic the wave and structure of the in a flat way of the banner that goes around those 3 columns in the middle. And that's where we can have the different stopping points in the life cycle of a bill around the room. So you can just follow that around the room and start to understand how each of the different branches plays a role, how checks and balances plays a role in just the life of a bill as it moves through the government process and through the citizens' reaction and engagement with it. And that is the civics lab. So I think we beat our deadline for time on this. I think we did good. Are there any last questions before I surrender to whoever's next?
Looking over at our education counterpart, And any flags come up or any concerns, any additions or subtractions that you can think of, Rob?
Mr. Chairman, there's 4 of us from the Department of Education who've been attending many of these meetings, maybe not all at once, but we're like tag team wrestlers. And usually there's 2 or more of us there, but we've been part of a lot of the core team meetings and the discussions of the text and the graphics and the content and the gear shift, the gear mechanism as an example, and we're fairly satisfied. And we've checked with Superintendent Dagenfelder, and she's okay with the direction this is going. So no comments other than I think DI and the core team and everybody involved in this content is doing a good job.
Thank you, Bob. That was something that was really important to us from the outset, is to make sure that our education folks were involved from the beginning, so that it ties in with all the things that we hope that our youngsters are taught by the time they get to these 4th grade levels and high school levels when they come down to see us. So I'm excited about this, and I think it's on a great track, you guys. Subcommittee, any other thoughts on this?
You know, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
just on the gears thing there, just wondering what the height is on that, because I guess with the adoption of digital in younger ages, is that height going to be I don't know what the average height of a 1st grader is, or 2nd grader, but you don't want to have a gear thing that's large that I can crank. I'm just wondering what that design looks like as far as the height of the gear things, because I think you're going to run out of participants probably by the age of 3rd grade here within 5 or 6 years. So you want to make sure that it's, I guess, functional at a age level, or could be, something that would be adjustable or something as far as the actual, having the kid turn the crank as far as height.
Absolutely. Good question. Everything, not just the gears, but everything in the room, we are taking into consideration the ADA requirements for appropriate access. I think I mentioned that the depth of the trough that the gears will go in, we're looking at whether that needs to be shallower to meet those requirements, because not only does it need to be at a particular height level, it also needs to be accessible from a depth perspective as well, so they can reach up and get to that height too. So we're making that consideration throughout the room to make sure that, like for example, all those micro interactors that you have to touch and feel and move around, those are all below the level required for the audience members we're trying to target. Actually for anybody, and that incorporates concerns that we have for someone who's in a wheelchair, for example, and the requirement for them to be able to access certain components within the room as well. So that's an excellent question, and it's being considered with every build that we're exploring.
Further questions, committee, and looking over Kevin's direction, everything is looking on track, you guys. Yeah. Appreciate y'all being here to listen in. Nigel, we love the track this is on, and what else do you have for us?
I think that's it. I love it too. I'm very excited. I'm kind of giddy about this room. I think it's going to be one of the highlights of the whole tour experience throughout the Capitol. So I'm happy that with everybody's help, we've got to this really good place, and we've got more of a mountain to climb, but we are definitely past base camp, I think. So
Yeah, I think so. We appreciated you today, and Rachel, Nigel, both of you. Thank you for carving out some time. I don't even know if you were able to get back to the office to do this, so sorry about the flight and everything falling apart, because we always love to see you here, but thanks for zooming in and catching us up on the progress.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, you guys. We'll let you get going, and have a great month. We'll see you again next month.
Sounds good.
Thank
Sounds
you
great.
so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
That kind of closes us off on the Civics Lab design update on your agenda. It takes us to acoustics, but before we go any further, I'm looking over at our staff. Is there anything to wrap up discussion on civics, Rihanna? We do have, thank you for sharing the note with all of us regarding July the 10th. We do have that looming on the horizon. That's State Day, which I think will be a fun celebration for all of us to maybe put that on our calendars if we can. Did you have anything to add on that, Rihanna?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, just so everyone's aware, on July 10th, the Capitol will host a kickoff event for the Capitol 250 event, and that will be the official kickoff. And then every month leading to July 4th, 2026, there'll be different events going on. Some in the Capitol, some in our community. And so we're working with our partners at State Museum and Cultural Resources and ANI and the Military Department and Office of Tourism are helping us get this event off the ground. And we are hoping, Mr. Chairman, as you indicated, if the items for package 3 are complete for you all to do a formal ribbon cutting, since you didn't get to do that in December. So the hope would be to officially ribbon cut and then, unveil in more of a formal manner the static exhibits that were already throughout the building, and then also the digital components. So specifically the Portraits of History exhibit, the Staged Vault, the Foundations of Progress, the niches. So we're working tirelessly and hard to get to that July 10th event, so you guys can have your moment for all your hard work. So that's part of the agenda for the July 10th event. And then I think between now and then, what would follow is, as DI indicated, there will be a review of today's deck for you guys to continue to share any more feedback. And then also, we're still getting a handle on some of those content reviews for other items with package 3. And then ultimately, the Civics Lab and the Constitution Interactive would come later this fall. So the idea would be to install package 3 this summer and then the Constitution and the Civics Lab later this fall.
Well, thank you, Rihanna, for that, and thanks to the core team. Those of you, and I'm looking at several of you that are involved daily on this. July 10th is going to come up in a hurry, so I know that's a very busy effort to try to get something pulled off. I hope the committee will put that on your calendars, and hopefully we can all be there. It should be kind of a fun day to celebrate the state of Wyoming anyway, but Rihanna, please let us know if there's something we can do. Usually there isn't, but I appreciate it. Let's move on to acoustics if there is nothing else on everything that we covered with DI today. Let's go to acoustics, and Brandon, catch us up.
Here we are. So we were able to hear from the design team this last time that presented their 65% findings. They're currently in the process of pulling together their 95% documents. And actually, they're really close on that and getting that off to the cost estimator. So our meeting on June 17th, I believe, is our next meeting. They will present those 95% findings at that time, and we'll have a full cost estimate with that. And so at that time, we'll be able to comment as they finish out to 100%, and then maybe look a little deeper on how we want to proceed with the multiple parts of the project. If and how we want to break the project apart and price it as we're rolling forward. So they're busily working on it right now. We left this open in case they had questions for the committee that they needed answer, but they felt pretty good with where they are. Me and Wendy meet with them weekly to review where they're at and where they're going, and try to give them further direction. So this next meeting, we will push forward and have that a pretty complete document set at that next meeting.
Thank you, Brandon. And for you and Wendy, maybe you can help me, but And maybe it'll be helpful to the rest of the committee to know what happens from that point forward. So when we get the full recommendation from our consulting team, then it will be up to us to forward a recommendation on up from there. Is that, am I reading that correctly? And that would go to management council and to SBC. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I bring that up just so that everybody knows where that acoustical process will go from here. What's the time frame on that, you guys? We try to gather monthly, so we'll have our opportunity, but at what point do you anticipate being able to present that to our leadership teams? Is that a fair question?
And, Mr. Chairman, I might make one clarification, which is the acoustics project statutorily is a little bit different than the exhibit project. The exhibit project specifically provides for you as a recommending entity to make your recommendations to SBC and Management Council and to SBC for final design approval. The acoustics project was appropriated to the construction management division for that first $1 million. Anything just by nature of joint governance in the building with Management Council and State Building Commission, anything that has an architectural impact to the building goes to State Building Commission, and if it's specifically in legislative space like the chambers, to council. So there is that certain chunk of this design that Trainer is doing that is mechanical only. There will be no noticeable architectural change as a result, for example, of changing out the way the fan coil units run to dampen the sound, to go in behind the chases and change the way the velocity is now neck down and making those noisier. So that is major maintenance money. That's not part of this appropriation. So one of the things that you would be able to do is you'll still make, the statute says you'll make your recommendations to the construction management division. So there's a certain portion of that you could pull off, and if you're comfortable with it, that then would go back into CMD's court. Anything that would require architectural changes, which are basically sound absorption on the walls, those are under the statutory provision about any changes architecturally go to State Building Commission and Management Council. So the first piece would be kind of trying to, how do you eat this elephant one bite at a time? You could take care of mechanical with major maintenance. It's not an architectural change. And then you as a group will need to decide, what's your appetite for it? How much does the cost estimating come in? How much money do you have in your appropriations? And then if you would absolutely probably need to sequence the work based on when different parts of the building would be available if you want to do it as one project, or as discussed last month, if you want to pick and choose and have one part bid out and see how it goes, and then, withhold judgment till certain portions of that work are done.
Thank you, Wendy. That's really helpful, and I hope it was helpful to everyone to kind of, at least, construction management will have the backing of this committee. I think that's an important piece too. But it's a nice reminder that some of that work we can push it on through and get going, and then some of it is going to have to go to leadership. So hope that makes sense. And any other thoughts? Any questions for Brandon? Thank you for keeping us posted, Brandon, on that. Capital Extension Gallery and Custodial Break Room build out. Do you want to catch us up real quick?
Yeah, so where we're at with that, we're a little behind the 8 ball with that. Our consultant had a family crisis, really. And we're catching back up to speed. They had done some preliminary work, some reconnaissance work here at the Capitol, and have kind of a generic plan rolling forward. We will be meeting next week with both A&I, LSO's part of that, kind of kicking off where that further direction's going. So hopefully again on the 17th, we'll have a little more direction of where they're at, where they're going with that project.
Any questions on the gallery and the work back here by this room?
Remind us what our budget is for that.
That's a do you want to? Yeah, it's
We can count it as a WAG if you want.
Isn't it one amount of money that goes to three different things?
Right.
And the amounts.
right. So we're kind of working towards that cost estimate to see how that money breaks out from the 3 different projects that are all part of that. So I don't have a good answer for you at this time, and hopefully on the 17th, we can have a better answer of maybe how that division of those 3 projects breaks out.
We had a total?
Yes.
So your appropriation was for 1.5 million, and that is for the broadcast studio, the Capitol Gallery, and the custodial break room, as well as any additional that you may or may not need for acoustics. So Trainer has the contract to do the broadcast studio design, and then the other 2 portions, which are the reason Trainer was involved in the broadcast studio design, is because there isn't that acoustical element of trying to separate noise from the elevators and the restrooms and the hallway for the studio. So that's been under a different contract than these other 2, which are basically more minor remodeling of extension space. So when those 2 different consultants come in with those amounts, as well as we're about to talk about maquettes and another pot of money that is also available for acoustics. So we'll know more in June where cost estimating is for broadcast studio.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, quick update. Gentlemen, can you help me to understand what the gallery needs out here? Just in general terms, what modifications do we need to make out there?
So, and Brandon, Mr. Chairman, or correct me if I'm wrong on any of it. So my understanding is removal of the chair rail to make the walls more cohesive for larger pieces of art and pedestals, latrines, etc. And then patching, painting, and then installation of track lighting system, just so ability to modify lighting. And then pending the scope, the possibility of the tile floor, the black tiles where the statues used to be, removing those depending on kind of where the project falls.
And so we're kind of carrying too in some of these hallways where the carpet is, extending the tile further depending on where we are within budget. That'll be part of the design. It'll be an ad alternate depending on where we land budget wise.
Gotcha. Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
so all of those things that you're talking about, the tiles and all that, that's major maintenance, that's this budget, right?
No, it comes out of this budget as part of the project.
Why? Seems like if you're replacing the tiles because something moved, that's just getting it back to where it was, not necessarily, it seems like that's, I don't know, I'm trying to look for definitions where, so you have a little bit of leeway.
And we can look at that. We can look at that possibility. I can take it back to Suzanne and Dave and see if that's a possibility working with that. And that's a great idea.
It's more cosmetic than architectural.
Absolutely.
That might give a little more flexibility. It's a good point.
Yeah, we will.
Go ahead.
And then the other piece for the art gallery will be the construction of pedestal bases of various sizes to have on hand that will match the millwork that you already have in the building. So that way everything kind of brings it, although the ones that the museum has provided as stopgap measure work, they maybe aren't quite the right appearance for this space.
Thank you, Wendy. The most obvious thing on my list.
Well, committee,
The curator.
that'll be a good update. Hopefully in June, we can get a pretty good idea of what we can maybe get accomplished by the end of the year and some things like that. So what, will we also get a report on those structures outside? There's some other pieces that we have been charged with. Brianna, maybe you can help me with this. What, the bollards, and there were some other things that our committee needs to be concerned with, is there not?
Yep. Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I could go into that one. It's part of McCats. There's a $2.3 billion amount that was appropriated for this committee to oversee, and it's pretty broad language. It's for bollards, McCats, and acoustics, and Brandon and perhaps Suzanne will go into the bollards. This committee may not need to be involved in usage of those funds, but I'll defer to Suzanne and Brandon about whether or not where they're at in that process. Then McCats we'll talk about in a minute, and then the rest of that appropriation is available for acoustics.
Okay, Suzanne, I'm sorry for the awkward transition there into this next topic, but good afternoon. It's good to see you. Talk to us about that part of it.
So we've just had a meeting with our master plan consultant who's assisting us with the bollards. That design had come before the master plan working group maybe about a year ago. And then we had some staff turnover and things where it kind of got put on a back burner, but it's back out. We think that we will be able to have capital bollards installed before Frontier Days. We are about to, upon final consideration of a new bollard cover, what we're thinking is that we're just replacing the bollard covers on the existing 7 bollards in front of the Capitol. And then we're going to add 6 more to essentially replace where the Jersey barriers are. With matching covers. And those are made by the same manufacturer that made the LED light bollards that are at all 4 garden level and entrances. And so they're very, very similar, and they are attractive and complementary to the Capitol and similar to the existing bollard covers that were reclaimed from before the project. For the Supreme Court portion of that, which maybe isn't so much under the jurisdiction of this group, but still, interested, I'm sure, we'll be receiving a revised layout of I believe a C-rated bollard to assist there at the front of the building and then also at the back of the building, but not at the curb. And more substantial bollard projects or traffic control security projects may be considered in the future.
Thank you, Susanna. Boy, if that work in front of the Capitol can be done before your days, maybe the bollards can keep the bulls and the wild horses out of there. Yeah, excellent.
Suzanne, do you have a price tag on the bollards?
I don't. And I think what we're going to do, pending just a little bit more research, is I think that I'm going to put out an invitation to bid right away to get those covers on the way here. And so we're not waiting on the bid process for those to be ordered. I don't think the price tag will be nearly as high as the estimates that we shared a while back.
Wow, that's good news. Kind of rare news these days. So now over at the Supreme Court, we don't have any bollards in place now, do we? Those would be totally new, is that correct?
Yes, they are totally new.
So Suzanne, anything else on your front?
I don't think so. We have a master plan working group meeting Thursday afternoon where we'll kind of go over this, make sure that construction management's recommendations are agreeable to go ahead and move it forward.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate it. Thanks for keeping us posted, and we'll give any support we can along the way.
Okay, sounds good.
Anything else, committee, for Suzanne? Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to, I'm kind of hurrying through these items on our agenda, and don't mean to go too fast, but capital curator update. Let's go to that one.
Sure, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So just following up to the curator's corner last month, the Capitol Gallery. So start there. So I mentioned that I was looking and trying to get exhibitions scheduled out in that space for the next few years. I've currently got a schedule drafted through tentatively, through 2030. And going to be presenting that to the Museum Exhibit Committee, just to run that by them. But I'll tell you, it's a variety from traveling exhibits created by institutions across the state. It's inclusive of sole exhibitions that are curated with this specific institution. So the first one I mentioned last month was partnership with the Jim Gatchell Memorial Museum in Buffalo. It's also very collaborative. There are some that are very collaborative statewide so they're centered around a theme. So for example, we're looking at the 160th anniversary of Wyoming becoming a territory. And so my thought with that one is to engage every county across the state having or featuring kind of a token object as well as artwork from that county. So, working with institutions across the state, making sure that every county is represented. And then the biennial Governor's Capital Art Exhibition every other year. So an exciting list. I'm excited to share that with the Museum Exhibit Committee and excited to share that with you all once that's kind of gotten through that process.
Who's all on the museum exhibit?
So cool. So museum staff. I haven't attended one yet, so I'm not sure.
So it is the museum staff. We meet quarterly to talk about long range exhibit planning within the museum. And part of the idea of bringing this to that group was in those draft curation policies to kind of have some buy-in, and also because we know for installation, a lot of this is going to lean on the museum staff to make sure some of that installation can happen, some of the design that needs to happen for graphic panels. So it's really there to kind of get their buy-in for planning purposes so we can use all those staff resources appropriately.
So the idea of the Capitol Gallery really didn't exist until this committee put its head together and had the idea. And I get more excited as I hear what's coming. I think it's going to be a real centerpiece. One of the big feathers in the bonnet for me. So I appreciate you guys' work on that.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's exciting and looking out, and the conversations I've had with institutions across the state so far, people are very excited to participate and be represented in the Capitol. Kevin mentioned the curation policies. So just following up to the meeting last month again, we've reviewed those. I've, as mentioned, taken into account all of the comments received the end of last year. So we'll be sending that out again. The idea, kind of an absent objection review of those with the intent of then going to the SBC at the June meeting, I believe was the discussion. July, I'm sorry, that's what I meant, July meeting. So please let me know any questions, concerns, but thank you to everyone who shared feedback on those, very helpful. And then lastly, just a fun update. I'll be headed to Casper on Saturday. Fort Casper asked me to come up and share some information about the Capitol. And so I'll be going for their lunch and learn on Saturday and giving a program of art of the Capitol. So looking at the art in the architecture and the art in the building and the art on the grounds. So I'm excited to do that.
That is just terrific. Awesome. Well, anything else from the corner? Anything staff to add to any of that?
Mr. Chairman, we still do want to visit with you just briefly about maquettes and get some direction from you on what or if the subcommittee would like us to pursue before the June meeting. And Nathan was kind enough to bring a couple of them over. For anyone who may not know what a maquette is basically a smaller size of a larger bronze, typically created to give a rendition in small scale of what a larger piece may look like. So as part of the capital oversight group's work to commission statuary for the 4 niches on the 3rd level, they had one of the requirements in the call for artists that you come with 1 clay maquette and 3 sketches for the other 3 niches. And Delisade came with 4 clay maquettes in time for his interview, and those maquettes were later bronzed. These are what are called the artist proof, and Nathan brought over 2 of them. They are currently on loan to the state of Wyoming from Delisade. The original contract for the work for the full-size bronzes included up to, if the state of Wyoming wanted to purchase 12 what are called fine art sets of the maquettes. So the state of Wyoming basically had right of refusal to say yes or no to buying those. That contract has since expired, but we do still hold on loan the 4 artist proofs. So there's one of truth, justice, courage, and hope. They're currently on display in the governor's office. They've been rotated around the Capitol. Delisade's hope was that they would kind of move place to place throughout the building. But the 2024 appropriation for 2.3 million includes these. These are not 2.3 million. Includes these, potentially bollards if CMD needs funding for those, and then the rest is for acoustics. We have not got any updated pricing from Delisade for these. His artist proof in 2023, he was requesting about $39,000 for just the artist proof. And then for the other 12, if you were to purchase all 12, 11 more, they went down to about 35,000 for the set of 4 per piece. If you wanted to purchase 2, his prices were a little higher. So our question is only if you'd like to pursue either buying the artist proof to be owned by the state of Wyoming, or if you would like to pursue any additional sets.
I'm so sorry. 12 sets or 12 maquettes?
So a set is 4.
Okay.
So a set would be 4. I don't think he would actually, we never asked him the question if we wanted to just do, say, 12 of hope. He really sees them as all 4 together are the piece.
But I'm saying how many of these exist?
None, only the artist proof exists now.
And it's 39,000 for a set of 4 or 39,000 for one?
39,000 for the set of 4.
Okay.
Now, again, these numbers are a couple years old. It is obviously already cast. There is a theory, and I may turn to either Heaven or Nathan if they have any more background on this. There is a theory that the artist proof itself, while already cast, is kind of a value in and of itself, because it is the only maquette set. Whereas if you started producing them, perhaps they lose their cachet. The state of Wyoming wanted to make it clear in the original contract, these aren't something that you could start manufacturing and selling at your local retailer, so that they continue to have their value over time. Am I massacring this description?
You got it exactly right.
Rachel Clifton from the Arts Council was in charge of kind of managing this contract originally during the Capitol Square project, and that's a pretty standard thing in this type of world about how many of these fine art sets you would manufacture and release. At one point, there had been discussion about having them, if you did want to purchase all 12, having them distributed perhaps to community colleges, the University of Wyoming. There'd been discussion about auctioning them off and using the funds raised for other things in the Capitol Square. And it really has gone no farther, other than that they were included in this appropriation, but no line item within that larger amount appropriated.
I thought you just said that the contract had lapsed. But there are terms of the contract that you're saying that don't lapse?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Treasurer Meyer, thanks for that. So this would be kind of just best practices for bronzes at this point. We no longer have a contract with Delasad. When that contract was current, there was a certain pricing that he would have provided those 12 sets. The state of Wyoming did not exercise that option at the time. So at this point, there is no contract, but the state of Wyoming and Delasad would have to negotiate for a new contract if you wish to purchase this or additional sets.
I'm just thinking of the property rights of the artist, so you bought basically the copyright on the first by doing the 4 big ones. And these plays or whatever, that actually you have the copyright, the state does on all of this, and the artist can't produce another one without you saying it's okay.
Mr. Treasurer, I'd have to look exactly at what that contract is. I mean, there have been changes over time in how the state has handled copyright for artwork that it purchases, and especially in this case, commissions. That's a little bit different.
So my recollection is the artist retained the ownership rights of his work.
That would be typical.
And because I was fighting to change that, but the contract, I didn't win that battle. My question is on the maquettes. I think we had a choice of sizes on what, if they would be this size or if they would be a little smaller or larger. Wendy, do you recall what that was?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, at that time, we still were under the contract where you could have purchased up to 12 of this size. So there had been discussions about, well, what if we wanted to say do a miniature version or smaller than the maquette size? And that was not contemplated under the contract when it was still in effect.
So then, but my understanding is for him to cast any more, he has to recast. So they look just like this, but they'll be different because they'll be a new product. And one of the reasons why we talked about having some of these available for auction, say at the governor's annual art show or something of that effect, is to help pay for them. Because we didn't have the funds to do it. Or to at least have them someplace in storage so that the state has them available to them some in the future, which it won't if this dies. Delasad came here, 3 or 4 times at least to try to keep panning to get this done. And we kept putting him off over and over. And I'm the person that put the language in that 2.3 million so that we could be having this discussion when I was still in appropriations. So I'd like to move forward with it.
Is that money still available?
Yeah, it's still available.
No, the money is
It's
in an account for this.
It's part of the 2.3 million.
Oh, okay,
So it's part of the appropriation from last year.
but not for this, for these or.
No, we could buy these from those funds as well. And then I suggest we would do that as well. So we make sure we have these, but also the cost of what his current new cost would be for swell, the set of 12.
For what it's worth, I agree wholeheartedly with what Representative Nichols just said. I think it would be really short-sighted if we don't take advantage and certainly get the 4. I'm curious if the cast exists for these 4, the 2 of which we're looking at here. It seems to me that those casts would still be available if I know bronzing. And by the way, this is for any of you who've been to Casper College. If you've seen that Thunderbird out front, that's exactly how we paid for that. Was the selling of 100 maquettes. And it paid for the statue out front at Casper College, so. I think we're on track. I would think that these, would go very well if you ever wanted to auction a set of them. For example, so I kind of agree with Representative Nicholas. Why wouldn't we think about whatever the contract, we could at least find out. Let's find out what would you do a set of 12 for us? And then we can make the decision at that point. But I think you could probably generate a lot of funds to be used maybe for the outside, garden walk piece that we've talked about in this part of the garden square or of the Capitol Square. So anyway, that's my thoughts. I think it'd be a good use of money.
So just to be clear, it's not a set of 12, it would be 12 sets of 4.
12 sets of 4, yeah.
And roughly, we're probably looking at.
Yeah, if you can get him to do it.
I mean, just for ballpark, and.
Yeah, so, and again, these numbers are 2 years outdated, but at the time, when we last requested under fulfilling the contract, option, it would have been about 300,000 to purchase all 12 sets. 12 sets of 4.
Yeah, 12 sets. And I didn't say it right either, but yeah.
And then Kevin, do they, because I mean, I know these all come from a mold. So does he like destroy I mean, how does that work?
I mean, that's why I'd have to go in and look at the contract of, is it saying there's 12, and sometimes it is a standard practice to strike the mold so that none more can be produced. Same thing, I mean, if that original contract language, it is typical for the artist to hold the copyright, but there can be provisions to say you can't make additional copies without solicitation. Us, and so, yeah, I can ask artist council to send that over, and we can get some clarity on what the policies.
Just because I know if like there's obviously the artist proof is the higher price, then the first run's a little bit lower, but then you can do a second run for a little bit lower.
Well, committee, is there anybody who disagrees with the thought that we should secure the 4 that we currently have? That seems to me to be a no-brainer. I think we should purchase those. And then I would suggest that we find out what kind of contract we could expect if we were interested in the 12 sets.
I think we need to be kind of wise about it, because he's gonna push us as far as much money as he can get. So I think we need to tell him we have limited funds. So in other words, if we begin negotiations immediately, I think it will be more fruitful.
And we are the only person who can purchase them, right?
That's what we can find out.
Okay, yeah,
Now that the
that
contract expired, does he have the
Well,
ability?
I think we state right up front that, hey, we've got very limited funding, but would you still be interested in giving us a price of what if we wanted to pick up 10 or 12 sets of these?
I think we could tell him that we have authority to spend the 300 that was originally proposed. And just let him sit on that.
We could do that.
Up to the 300.
Or he might, by this point, say a better. Maybe if I ask for a little bit less than that, they might.
Depends on how busy it is.
Yeah, just gotta depend.
Well, that 300 is 25,000 set.
Let's not give a specific amount. Let's
Well,
just
so-
say, sharpen
Well,
your
he
pencil.
gave
Well,
us
if you say you're gonna spend 300, it says, well, I'll give you 4 for that.
So, Mr. Chairman, Treasurer Meyer, good point. He basically gave, if you bought them all at once, all 12 as a set, he gave a discounted rate. If you wanted to buy just the artist proof, 39,000, any additional set, if you just wanted to buy 4 at a time, that was the $35,000 price.
Okay, makes sense.
Well, I'll go ahead and put my order in for one set. Seriously, like 40,000.
Give me one while you're at it.
Yeah,
The,
yeah, that's right.
The one issue that we had back in the day was they're a little bit explicit, particularly around the nipples. And I do, and it doesn't bother me, but it bothered quite a few people. But I do think he has to do new casts, and so we might have to have that gentle discussion with him to make him a little more politically correct.
Just a little sand.
Yeah.
It's just facts are facts.
Well, there is that. There is that.
Well, we could get some Barbie doll clothes and stick on top of them.
So is that enough direction? Before we dive off onto the county roads. Get back up on the pavement here.
I have a quick follow-up. What are the loan terms right now? Is the on loan from the artist? Like, I guess when does that
Yeah,
expire?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood, he has been very kind. There is a loan form through the museum, but he has pretty much said, I know where they are. I feel comfortable that you have them, but you know, they do not belong to the state of Wyoming. And he has said that at some point he would like us to buy them, to keep them on loan forever.
If we were, just hypothetically, if we were to auction the set that we're going to buy, is there any, has it been kicked around what we think that might generate? Because I think it's probably in six figures, right?
I've not explored that. I'm not sure what his market is. And obviously with the association with the capital, it's probably a different buyer than your typical kind of art market. So I've not explored that.
Well, if you're gonna make money on them, what you need to do is have a contract that says, you know, you're gonna buy 100 of them. And and the mold's gonna be broke. And the state gets the basically the artist's first cut. And we're actually, you know, you got 100 of them and that's it. And then for the next 100 years, you could auction one off, and then, yeah, maybe you'll get $100,000 for each one for the next 100 years. You know, I mean, and I think if you did 100 of them, you'd probably get it down to about $10,000 a piece. Or less, because you don't have $2,500 worth of bronze in each one of these things. You know, so I mean, I guess if you're gonna do it, do a survey, find out, you know, of pick the 20,000 highest donating political figures in the state. You can get that from the Secretary of State's office and ask them what they would pay for one. You know, you get the 100 of them, then that's something that would be, but find out whether or not from the AG's office, whether you could write a contract that 100 like that in the mold broke. Because that's where you actually get the money. Yeah.
I think we could take that up again after we find out.
Yeah, do a little research.
Even what the artist is up to.
Yeah, but seriously, I'll buy a set tomorrow if it's available for 40,000. So I got a floor on one. All right, okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, anything else on the maquettes, you guys? Are we good? Well, they're beautiful pieces, that's for sure. I think you're gonna get 4 of them. That's a done.
And I can be
So let's talk real quickly about what's coming up. Well, let's go to public comment. Richard, anything for this?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great to see you as always.
Great to see you all.
Is there anybody listening online who has any interest in commenting? Always want to make sure when we cover that. Okay, thank you. Let's talk about meeting dates coming up.
Mr. Chairman, you have your confirmed meeting date of June 14th. And as discussed earlier today, that meeting will be a heavier load with acoustics, so we'll plan accordingly on June 15th. Since our last meeting, we had confirmed the July 24th meeting date for all of you. In August 28th and September 24th. Those have all been confirmed and calendar invites and on the website. We have 2 more tentative meeting dates. This is the event that we don't think we will need them, but if we do need them, it's better to save your calendars now. So for your opportunity to see what works best for your schedule is October 22nd or October 29th for an October meeting. When I checked the calendar, there was no dates with any of your other committees, but that may have changed from last week. I don't know if you guys have a preference on either of those right now.
Got a full facilities meeting that crashes in about
On the
that time.
You have a school facility on 27th.
I do
so-
have on the 27th.
Either of those are fine.
Which month are you talking about now?
October 22nd or the 29th. Representative Sherwood has appropriations on the 30th, so I thought 29th could work. If you want to come down, that's why that date was selected, but it is up to what works best for your schedules.
I can do either.
Treasurer Meyer, Representative Nicholas.
Getting there. That's a Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Don't have anything on Wednesday, the 29th of October right now.
Probably the 22nd.
Oh, you're probably thinking the 22nd.
Yeah, okay. All right, it sounds like the 22nd, and then jumping over to November. And this is most likely not needed, but in the event it is needed, it's easier to let go of the date once we have this. We are looking at the 18th or the 19th, and that is the week before the holiday.
I just got a 3 o'clock on the 22nd. That's, when are you planning on meeting? Like 8:30 in the morning or something?
I'll make note that you have a conflict.
So what was the date in November?
The 18th or the 19th.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
On the calendar.
18th, okay?
Okay, well, we'll let go of those dates in the event that we don't need them, but we will send out calendar invites on the schedule. So just for everybody, October 22nd and November 18th.
Yeah. So on July 24th, do we have to meet early so the auditor and the treasurer can get in the parade, or is that a non-parade day, or what are we looking at?
I think we're.
What?
Why don't we have our meeting on a parade? Whoa. I've never been in the parade.
We bake.
What are you talking about?
Daisy's dance.
Frontier Days.
Frontier Days, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I was gonna ask
You
you
will
about
visit.
You could get a wagon that says wayfinding, we're looking for the capital.
We're all looking at.
Committee, anything else for the good of the cause? Appreciate all of you being here, and good to see you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have just one that I neglected to mention when we were talking about monies appropriated. Both the 1.5 million and the 2.3 million are currently in the capital square preservation account. Those can be accessed via MOU between SBC and Management Council. We will be working with CMD to develop that. And as you may recall from previous meetings, it's contemplated that this subcommittee would serve as the governance subcommittee of both SBC and Management Council for these types of decisions. So I just wanted to, again, let you know the money is there, but there will be a couple of hoops to be able to access it. And then the last thing,
In that regard, though.
Oh.
When we begin that process, we have to be constructive about it, just because we don't know what management council is gonna do. It's a volatile issue. In front of them, but.
And Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, it's the language in Capital Square Preservation account to access the funds talks about the MOU between SBC and Management Council. So you need that vehicle for the funding it's not the same as when exhibit design, for example, was going to those entities or when an architectural change. So I'll make sure to bring the language for you at the June meeting.
We ought to get a draft of that, and maybe it'd be nice that we could draft it in such a way that it just goes in block.
I do.
And Mr. Chairman, that is how that would be envisioned. It would be to send it to, say, for example, CMD. That's originally where the 1.5 million was appropriated. It reverted back to that account because the design had not been completed yet by the June 30 date. So that would be the logical, as CMD is already the contract holder for design.
I think what Representative Nicholas is saying, that we need to be strategic about how we present ourselves going forward. And we'll work carefully on that because Representative is right. We have a different leadership group in the management council than we've had in past years. I shared that concern this morning. Same thing. So it's on all of our minds. But Wendy, anything else?
Mr. Chairman, the last one is if you go out through the South Capitol doors, you'll see the beautiful flowers. Chrissy Madden is here with ANI, and that was an effort on ANI's part a few years ago to get those perennials going. And there's kind of a saying about perennial flowers of sleep the first year, creep the second year, and leap the third year. And you will see those perennials leaping. And the building and grounds crew is doing just a great job. They look fantastic. So if you came in this end of the building, and you might want to just take a little stroll out front, kudos to ANI.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I did nothing to contribute to that, so thank you for the applause.
It's beautiful.
Anything else, Treasurer? You good?
Oh, no, I think I have enough tidbits today.
Representative Sherwood? Madam Co-Chairman? Thank you, everybody. We're
the Barbie doll close.
Let's see what's in the box.